Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Empires and Puzzles video. And in this video, we have a bit of a special surprise, which is we want to talk about, with members of the Alliance, how we think we are able to do so well as a pretty casual alliance. It's kind of taken us by surprise how much we've moved up in the ranks despite our best efforts not to. Um, and so we want to talk about why we think that might be and just have a general discussion that maybe applies to your alliance and gives you some tips as well. So with me today, I have three members of the alliance. We've got H Money, wave your hand, Malix, and Country. So yeah, we wanted to break some of this down. This was H Money's idea. He also has a YouTube channel where he's made an effort to give some tips for people maybe with less than stacked rosters. So check that out if that sounds appealing. He's in the midst of a 4-star appreciation series talking about some of his favorites there. So check him out. But our main goal is going to be to share our collective insight on, like I said before, how a fairly casual alliance with a pretty wide variety of player levels has been able to compete with tougher top 100 alliances. Briefly, I wanted to go into our sort of alliance history, how we ended up in this place. And what that is, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, joined an alliance. It was all UK players. It was some casual, or probably mostly casual. And because I bring a certain intensity with me to most things that I do, we started pushing more in that direction. And long story short, they ended up promoting me as leader of that alliance. We have lost some of those members over time. But that's kind of where we emerged from. And we were always trying to be balanced with people who are more competitive and people who had been there for a long time and didn't necessarily want that. But yeah, essentially our philosophy has been, or at least mine, and these guys can jump in with what they think, but I always have felt like the top 50 or top 100 for alliances is kind of like a meat grinder where it can be pretty intense up there. You're facing a lot of the strongest teams, heroes, and players in the game. And that can be the place where you encounter a lot of these same defenses over and over, maybe 28 out of 30 Alfrag tanks and rush with level 29 troops and all kinds of stuff like that. So to me, it just didn't seem that fun. So all of these things combined have sort of placed us where we are. So with that stuff in mind, anything coming to mind for anyone about any of this?
Yeah, man, I think you're exactly right.
Oh, you're a bit quiet back there for some reason. Can you guys hear him loud and clear?
Sounds quiet to me.
Sounds quiet. Okay.
I don't know, man.
Oh, there you go.
There you are.
Okay, hey.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right. You're facing the same teams in defense, which it gets boring. But it's not only that, there's a lot more to top 100. You got to meet daily averages, weekly averages on Titans. They're hyper strategized in war. And I mean, we're strategized, but it's not crazy. Everyone kind of gets to do what they want. And that's why I like it so much in our alliance. I didn't like being told what to do, to be honest. And with ours, we're totally free. And that's what I enjoy about it.
Yeah. And I think as the game evolves, that spreads even further, where now it seems like there's teams telling you who you have to limit break based on what the defenses are, and a lot of stuff that just maybe removes or pushes you a little bit away from kind of the fun aspects of just being like, well, this is what I feel like doing. And any alliance comes with compromises, but we try to find a good balance point there.
It's pretty rigid and regimented, to be honest. Yeah. And it kind of takes the fun out of it.
Yeah. So for a long time, we had kind of been sitting in like the top 500. That kind of moved up to the top 300, 200. And that to me seems like kind of a sweet spot of where it's still fun to compete. There's still challenge. There's still, there's always the risk of losing looming there. But that's been kind of a fun spot to be. And we've tried to stick around there, and then the other day found ourselves at top 40 for the first time ever. So yeah, that kind of crept up on us. So something else I want to touch on, and this is where we can weigh in more of a group, as a group, is what our philosophy to recruiting has been like. In the interest of trying to stay in a particular zone, like a lot of alliances are looking for the strongest player and someone who's willing to follow the rules, and that propels you and that keeps you in the top if that's where you want to be. We're often trying to replace the player we lost in terms of roster depth and team power. And that was our philosophy for trying to stick a little bit, or trying to not move up, right? We don't want to just keep replacing every player with the strongest player. So yeah, I think pretty much everyone in here has been involved with recruiting at one time or another. Do you guys want to weigh in on how we sort of handle that process and I guess what we're looking to accomplish depending on the situation?
Sure. I've been involved in it for a while now, and I think one of the things I like the most is being, a top tier alliance, not a top 1 or 100 alliance, but we give players of maybe a little lower level a chance to grow and learn the game with us. That's been one of the most fun things for me, being a part of this alliance for over a year and a half now, is helping people learn. When I first got here, you guys taught me a ton, and just being able to pass on that information about heroes and synergies and how to approach different things, I think is one of the more fun aspects of the game for me.
Yeah. And I think that process of working with people touches on something I want to talk about later too, which is creating a pretty tight-knit community. I think the kind of morale and group dynamics of the alliance have a big impact on how it feels to be there, and I think even the performance of the team. But yeah, and to your point, I think it shows that a lot of growth has happened in that we tend to replace the players we lose with a pretty much equivalent player in terms of strength, and we keep finding ourselves creeping up higher and higher. So I think as a team, we've grown pretty strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can say, specific to myself.
Sure.
When I entered the alliance, I think my defense was about 4,400, which is somewhat comically low if you're trying to shoot it at the top 100. And I came in with the knowledge that I would be expected to do a lot of cleanups, which frankly against like if you're looking at a wall of Alfrex, like cleaning up is kind of welcoming. But it was I was worried that maybe I didn't have the stacked enough roster to contribute. And I got a private message like within the first week or two from Country saying, "Hey, we're glad to have you, the scores that you're putting in and helping everybody out and just being a part of things, and you're holding up your end." And that meant a lot to me, because I honestly was worried, like, geez, I it was worse than like small fish, big pond. It was like, guppy in a ocean full of sharks, and I was worried that I didn't necessarily have the weight to pull, but to get that message, that was, it was really, really important, and has been a thing that I've tried to carry on as we get new members too, is, to play that cheerleader role, to make sure that in those first couple of weeks, like, hey, you're here for a reason. We're glad to have you. It's important that you're here. And, like, just because you're not taking a crack at the 5,000 defense with 3 alfies in it doesn't mean that you don't have a place and that's not an important place.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing too. And again, comes back to the camaraderie and the group dynamics. And I think it's, as much as possible, important to have fun with it. And I think we try to do that. With any group, there have to be some compromises of, hitting the Titan. We do have certain war strategies that we expect people to follow. So all those things are important. But then outside of that, it's like important to have fun and to kind of appreciate everyone's contributions. And I think that makes it a good place to be. So what you mentioned touched on the next point I wanted to make, which is kind of like enter the idea of the cleanup crew, which is something that we have, and we'll often recruit players specifically for this role. Typically players that have weaker rosters relative to some of the stronger ones, maybe don't have quite as many heroes leveled up, or the troops aren't quite all there yet, with the idea that, you know, we would ask you to help with a lot of the cleanups. And I think this has been a really important part of our strategy that just happened very naturally, both from the very casual origins of the Alliance and also trying to not climb too high, but it's kind of become a key characteristic of ours. And I think one that is kind of at the center of this discussion and something that has really helped us to do so well against these teams. And this is something we're going to come back to in various ways throughout this conversation. But yeah, I think I mean, you guys were in other alliances before this. Is that sort of an unusual concept, or how were things done? I know Malix was in the top 100 for a while, so we'll come back to that because I'm curious to hear, you know, we've touched on it briefly of like weekly averages, and I think my understanding is the default is to clean up your own mess. But Country and H Money, from your backgrounds and other alliances, was it just kind of free for all, or how did things work for you guys?
Yeah, I've only ever been in two, Spock, and the first one was pretty much just a free for all. If you felt like you could take a team on, take them on. You kind of were expected to do your own cleanups if you missed a hit, and no real strategy at all as far as war or Titans or any of that.
Yeah,
very, very, very casual.
And I think that happens because that's kind of the easiest thing to do. It's hard to, one, come up with a strategy that will work, and then two, get people to stick to that. If you can at least have some rules of like, well, you clean up your own mess, that's a smaller ask than like having separate types of players in the alliance that do different things. So what about you, H Money? Were there other alliances you were in before?
Yeah, so I've been in, this is the third alliance that I've been in. The first was a lot like what Country said. There was really no expectation, no anything. Like there were people that didn't do any of their war hits, never hit the Titan. And then ironically, I was in that alliance with my son, you know, because I actually started playing the game with him. And he was, you know, kind of the guy who didn't hit anything, and they kicked him out comically, like they didn't do anything to anybody else. So I left that alliance and went to a second alliance, which was, there was at least, you know, expectation of hitting the Titan and whatnot. But as far as war strategy, it was, when I got there, it was pretty much, you know, just do whatever you want. And I noticed that we were getting beaten by teams that were, you know, objectively much lower level than us in terms of roster, in terms of, you know, players and whatnot. And it was because they just had a basic, you know, farming strategy. And, you know, we're just timing their hits so that they were getting to the reset. Mm-hmm. And so I started researching on my own about, you know, like war strategy, because I had really had no concept of it. And that actually led me to your page, by the way. And I don't know that you had any specific war videos, but I started watching your just your war hits, and then, you know, like the thought process and whatnot was very alluring to me. Mm-hmm. And then we started, you know, having a strategy and doing things. And by that time, I had a brief correspondence with you, and there was an opening in the alliance, and I asked if I could join and talk to Country about it, and it worked out. So it was like, it was becoming, in my opinion, less of the complete casual kind of, you know, do whatever you want. But it was still pretty close to that. But I actually am still pretty close to all the members of that alliance. They were all good people. I just wanted something where I had a chance. I like the idea of the team, of being the team that beats, you know, people that are, you know, that have higher level rosters than us. I find that very alluring. Mm-hmm. And at the time, we were kind of in the other position, and I wanted to, you know, to learn and to be outside of that position.
Mm-hmm. So as a counterpoint to those, Alex, I think right before this, you were in a top 100 alliance, and I'm curious just to hear from specifically a war perspective. Not that every top 100 alliance is the same, but how did you guys handle war, and what did you think about that?
Yeah, the one I was in, we were put into groups, 6 one-shotters, 5 one-shot and a clean. There were 4 one-shot and 2 clean, and 3 and 3.
Hmm.
And I personally never really liked that. All these guys had huge rosters and they got to do 3 cleanups. I mean, I know that feeling just wasn't great for some people.
Yeah.
And then for me, I was put into the 6 one-shots, and like I felt the pressure. Like I felt like if I didn't perform well, I was going to get moved down.
Mhm.
I didn't really love that. I know a lot of the top 100 just kind of you clean your own mess. But going back to what we're doing, our cleanup crew is our greatest weapon. I really believe that. Nobody, led by H Money, I mean, they just do it. It's like they like doing it almost. For me, I can go into a war hit and fail because you can't go 6 for 6 every time, even though I'd like to. But then I can just go into the next, full team. And before I'm done with the next one, I mean, that mine's already cleaned up. I mean, it's amazing. And I do think that's why we have come so far, kind of so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really love the war strategy. I kind of preferred kind of clean your own mess where I was, but now I kind of like how the way it works for us is just, it's just been working so good. I mean, we can pretty much beat anybody at this point.
We're coming for you guys. The
Exactly.
clean your own mess thing seems to me like the most equitable thing. Like you mentioned, the 6 one-shots, 5 and 1, 4 and 2, 3 and 3. I assume those were randomly assigned, or they were issued based on your performance.
Yeah, they were issued by roster and performance.
Yeah. So I can see that being frustrating. And if you're applying to the alliance, you don't know what group you're going to be in. Your group could change, so that can really shift the way that it feels to be there. And something we've tried to do is make those expectations clear from the start of like, here's what we're really looking for. And if someone doesn't want that, that's okay. And we try to find people that seem okay in that spot. And so oftentimes the cleanup crew, like H Money had mentioned, are people with weaker rosters that want to learn more or be in a bigger alliance or any of those things. They're kind of happy for the opportunity and are willing to take on those cleans. And, a clean can be anything from a team of 5 heroes left where there's 100 HP missing from the tank down to, just a single hero with 1 HP. I think those ones are never quite as fun, but it's not uncommon for people that are taking exclusively cleans to get better scores than people that are going for 6 one-shots. So it's not without its glory. And I've really seen us sort of rally around that stratification that we have, to where people are very happy, like you mentioned, where it's that teamwork aspect is like becomes a point of pride, and it's easy to feel good about us working together. Like it's really exemplified that team aspect. And I don't think that was something that I set out to intentionally do. Like we have a leadership team, so it's obviously not just me, but it just seemed like it happened. And I was like, I like this. And we've just kind of been rolling with it and trying to do a better job at that same thing. And it's carried us quite far. So yeah, oftentimes it does feel like that is a bit of a secret weapon, because the philosophy there is save stronger flags for stronger teams, weaker flags for weaker teams. And there's always going to be a mix of both on the battlefield. And so if we have a mix of both, that's kind of equally matched, right? So we say something like bite off as much as you can chew, but don't go too far with it. So kind of it's important to understand your roster and your heroes and what you can accomplish, and to try to choose targets based on that. So I think just that smart target selection in general, whether it be what heroes you're choosing to fight, what heroes, or whether you're using, a less stacked roster to take on just a partial cleanup, all those things together seem to be really working for us. And it catches me by surprise sometimes, because you'd think, I don't know, I guess I would think that that's not necessarily the best way to do it. I don't know. It's just ending up here has kind of surprised me. Has that been the case for you guys as well, where we just seem to keep pushing up, and like, how is
If
this
I
happening?
if I can add something here,
Yeah.
I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing post-war postmortems and trying to figure out what went well for us and what didn't go well for us. And there was an offhanded comment that the Empires and Puzzles books guy, who I love, by the way, his channel is one of my very favorites. He made it offhandedly, and he said that if you want to know if you're contributing to your team, just look at your score and then how many points your defense gave up. And if your score is higher than that number, then you contributed, and if not, you didn't. And while almost everything he says I totally am in line with, I'm going to take some umbrance to that, because let's take an example of on a defense, you're in rush and you don't have an Alfreich, so you're going to get farmed. So you're going to get hit twice, and that's just going to happen. And then we're going to go, like maybe they're going to go for the resets or whatever. So potentially your defense could give up a lot of points. Secondarily, during the offensive phase, let's say, I'm available for some hits, and I've got between 2 and 5 one-shot teams, depending upon the opposite team's tanks and, what I'm looking at as far as matchups. But let's say it's one of those that I don't have a lot of good one-shot options, but you and Malix are on the board, and I'm here to take, a 20 point miss that one of you guys made. Well, that leaves the one shot that you guys still have in your roster to take that one shot. Now our points per flag average goes up. So by taking a 20 point clean, I've saved you from doing it. And then I'm not going to be out there trying to take a one shot that has a low percentage chance of taking, of succeeding. And so points per flag average for the whole team is the contribution that you can still look for it. If you're purely going for clean up your own mess, then I think that what that guy said was totally true. But if you're playing as a team, quote unquote, then it comes down to points per flag average, and not just yours. It's the whole team's. And so the more opportunities I give those big hitters to take those big swings, then the better our PPF is over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And as you're watching this and thinking about this, you might be wondering, okay, well, I'm on board so far. I can see the merits of this, but what do you do about defense teams? Because then you might be having easier flags or easier points on the board. So that's something that's just kind of been spontaneous, and it's not something that we require or anything. For the most part, people are just choosing their own teams, aside from tank color. But we've had kind of a striking success with one 4-star hero as a tank, and I think we're going to try this everyone in one war once, maybe, if everyone feels like maxing this hero. But these teams outperform my team often. I think it's possible I have a target on my back and people are using their better teams there, but it is really funny to see this, because I think there's a psychological tactic here where, because people see a 4-star, they're really underestimating, and this one hero does really well. And who that hero is for us is the standard Bold Tusk, max defense emblems, and limit broken. And we'll often see 0s, 1s, 2s, 3s against these heroes in multiple flags sometimes. And it's kind of funny. And I think the best estimation I can come up with is the psychological effect of like, oh, I'll take the 4-star, But he's like in the mid 900s on defense with the limit break, and he can revive, and he's got plus 48% attack for the rest of the team for 4 turns, which is a really long time. And he's got a slight heal in there too. So yeah, it's been surprisingly effective. And I was curious if that inspired anyone to want to share their experience around this, because I think it's been a shocking thing for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. It never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah.
On every war, outside of Rush, where we have, our red tanks in there,
Yeah.
there is always multiple, at least 2 flags on those teams.
Mhm.
And you can just count on it. Whoever we're playing, even the times we've faced, top 100 alliances, those teams hold their own as good as any of our quote unquote high level
Yeah.
new meta teams do.
Yeah.
And it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little trap where they're like, all right, I'm going to go for the weaker players. And then they overestimate how well they're going to do. And these teams do surprisingly well. So it's kind of a fun thing that, maybe people catch on to it eventually. I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's really a thing you can catch on to, actually. I think it's just a deceptively difficult team that you do have to respect. And when you rush in or you're trying to use weaker heroes or something like that, you can get smacked sometimes. And I think it's really satisfying for everyone because it feels like we are a mix of player levels, and it can be hard to be the lower level player and you're hitting 14-star Titans and you're doing mostly cleanups, but there can be a lot of enjoyment in seeing your 4-star tank just taking 3 flags and then watching my team get slayed in one shot every time in the war.
Mine too.
Yeah.
The best part about the BT crew, is going back to what we're talking about with farming and like, does your defense contribute? Does it not? Are you contributing? If you have a bolt tusk tank, you're going to get hit more and you're probably going to give up more points. But if you then divide those points by the flag, it doesn't, it comes out in the wash. And I make the joke that Odin's defense is going for most valuable player on our whole team.
Yeah.
Every single war, it does something insane. And I saw one guy use all of his flags on Odin and like never one shot him.
Yeah. I think even on our own team, having seen how well he's performed on other teams, even on our own team, there was a lot of people who were like, but he's a 4-star, like maybe I should use Santa. And, maybe Santa can perform fine, but I think it's become abundantly clear that Bolt Tusk really holds his own. I mean, obviously you got to have the right heroes around. They're going to capitalize on that attack buff, but he's dangerous. And it's just funny how it was slow for some of our own players to get on board with that as well. There's just this thing in your head of like, he's a 4-star, he's weaker, it'll be easier. And limit breaks have really turned that notion upside down because there's a lot of heroes that you really have to look at the stats now. Like, I think in the tournament yesterday, I looked at a limit broken Wukong that was like, I don't know, 879 attack and like 770 defense, which is a respectable number. And he's definitely a threat in the tournaments now. But yeah, that limit break has really kind of changed the game a bit because maybe it's just new and we haven't all adjusted yet, but there's something there, and it's really allowed us to maintain a balance where we get the benefits of having stronger hitters and cleanup crew, but also not having really any defenses that are easily farmable. So maybe we're just in the honeymoon sweet spot phase right now, but I certainly hope it holds up because it's been a lot of fun.
And Bolt Tusk definitely disrupts the early stages of farming. And there's multiple times where he's put the other team on their heels and they're reeling and they've got a points per flag disadvantage going into the reset phase. And just looking at those postmortems, you'll have, like 6 of the top 10 players are on their side, and yet we're beating them by 1,000. And it happened because of those early farming stumbles, and they just couldn't recover points per flag from that period.
Yeah, which I think touches on something that we've also touched on here at the beginning of this, which is just how important the team morale aspect is. Because like what you're pointing out there, I think that's totally true, that if they're doing their farming phase and they're struggling for reasons that they don't quite understand yet, that can have a big impact on the outcome of the war, because now they're like, oh shit, we're starting off behind, or how are we going to make up this deficit? And like you
Night,
said,
bud.
putting them on their heels, there is that psychological aspect. And I think the same is true. I had this observation at the end of our last war, where as part of the leadership team, what we try to do is really keep things positive as much as we can without it feeling forced or without it feeling fake or something, but just trying to remind people that don't let it get to you. And in the last war, I had an interesting observation, at least for me, which was I had seen a lot of that throughout the war. People being like, damn, this, we're really struggling, or like, this was not my war, or like, maybe this one's just getting away from us. And we ended up winning by over 1,000 points, which in Rush is like 20% of your total score, So yeah, it was just kind of surprising. And I think it's really important to try to not let that stuff get to you. And there's like tilt on an individual player basis where you have one bad flag and then now you're flustered and you're playing faster, and it can really get to you. But I think there's a positive version of that where you kind of let that stuff go. And I think, like you were mentioning for the bulk tusk defenses, I think that can have an interesting impact on the farming phase when they're failing and not expecting to. And who knows how many times that has impacted the outcome favorably for us because they got off to a rocky start, and they're like, oh, just the boards suck for us, and who knows, you never really get to hear what the opposition is saying, but I think it's easy to forget that they're often struggling as much or more than we are. We're just very aware of kind of what our experience has been there. And a quick note, if anyone watching this wants to go through my war playlist and figure out what our win ratio is, definitely do that and let us know in the comments. I've not done this myself, and there's a few wars left out, not for any particular reason, so it won't be 100% accurate, but I know we're well above 50%. We often go on 5-game, 6-game winning streaks and maybe lose a couple, but if anyone wants to throw that in there, I think that would be really interesting to see.
I'd love to know that record.
What's that?
I'd love to know the record. That'd be so interesting to know exactly kind of where we've been the last whatever amount of time.
Yeah.
I think you've pretty much got every single one on video, no?
Every once in a while I'll miss one for some reason, like something happens with the video or something minor. So it should be very close. I mean, all the dates are there, so it's easy to see where the gaps are. All right, we got to make our predictions. I think we're over 60%. That's my conservative. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would put us in that 65 to 70% win ratio.
Yeah, I'm thinking 70 as well.
I think 70-ish.
It seems quite good. Like it will be very interesting to know. If no one does it, I might end up doing it myself eventually, but it does feel like we do very well. And we've really been climbing lately. Like, I don't know, it wasn't more than a month ago that I feel like we were down in the 200s or something. And then we keep peaking up higher and higher. And then this is our first time in the top 50. I took a screenshot where for a brief moment, we were actually ranked higher than 7 Days Departed, which was kind of fun to see.
And if you look at our record against top 50 alliances right now, we're, I believe, 2 out of 3. We're currently facing one that was was number 16 earlier this week when we were putting them together. I think this one's going to be a tough one, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But either way, our record against top 50 alliances is better than 60%, and that's, to me, that's a pretty impressive stat for. We don't have anybody on a spreadsheet checking your average war scores or anything. And that's the thing that is most exciting to me is like for your normal, person who can't set alarms at night and things like that, because they have a job to do and kids to raise, or maybe no kids, but just don't want to do that because it's, that's a level of dedication that is very high. You can still get up there and not just compete, but compete and win and be a real threat, in that upper tier.
Yeah. I think it has been 3 games now in the top 50 with the war that we're in currently being the 4th, and I believe we did win 2 out of those 3, which kind of was awesome for us as a group because 1, it happened, and 2, it just felt good because it felt like we could take ownership over that. I think Rush Attack feels a little bit more hit or miss, because a lot more of the outcome is decided in a lot less of the time. So the starting board really has a big impact, as we all know. But yeah, it really felt like an overall team victory, because I think everyone's contributing in a multitude of different ways. So we're kind of working together as that well-oiled machine, so to speak.
And it's super good for the morale of the Alliance when we pull that off. Like, everybody's flying on a high for those few days between wars, where,
Yeah.
you know, hey,
So
we
you
just
opened the war chest.
we just stepped above, we just punched above our weight class by a bunch, you know.
Yeah, it does feel good, especially when we look at the troops. That had been my barometer in the past of like, all right, we just got matched up. War hasn't started. Let me check out this other team. Okay, not the most elite heroes necessarily, but you look at the troops, and the troops have a big outcome. Even 23 to 29 is only 2% mana, but I feel like I can feel that. And sometimes it's like, these have to be 29 troops. And I check afterwards, and it's like, yep, that explains that, you know, 1 turn faster charge or whatever. So yeah, a lot of these teams have had very stacked troops, which is not something. I mean, we've got a decent number of people who have hit 23 now. A couple people with a pair, or various people have gone to 29. But like, as a whole group, I would say that is definitely that would be a deficit in the standard way of looking at power and what you need, and we've still been able to make it work, which is cool.
Well, I think to further your point about that team tilt, it's almost a chorus whenever somebody comes on and they're like, oh geez, not my war, you know, boards weren't that friendly. And then like, it's almost a race to get on there and go, hey, hit him on the next one, you know, like don't sweat this one, like we're all here for you.
Yeah.
And just like what Malix was saying, where versus the feeling of having that pressure of you got someone with a spreadsheet breathing down your neck saying, you know, you better get your numbers up or we're going to have a problem, versus, hey, it wasn't your war, like, you know, we're here for you. So, you know, the next one, that person's going into it fresh and knowing that, you know, they don't have this weight on their back and this mental kind of, you know, just negativity before they've even, you know, looked at the opening board of their first fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it makes a big difference. Yeah,
that is a lot of pressure, and I personally feel like not many people perform well under pressure. Maybe there are some exceptions to that, but I feel like most people don't. And you know, we all know playing this game that there's a good amount of RNG, there's a good amount of randomness and luck to these things. So we can't control the boards. The best teams can lose. So to feel like you'll be punished for something potentially totally outside of your control can really make it stressful to play. And you're like, oh God, I got to really make this count. And I just don't think those things put you in the best state of mind to do well. So
it's just not fun. It's not as fun.
Yeah. So I
find our Alliance a lot of fun.
Yeah. And
no pressure.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where I don't think there's some of us that want to climb higher just to see if we can do it, right? There's something fun for like, oh, I wonder what we could do, right? But I think it would quickly be clear that it's not quite as fun as you get to that next tier of competition, because you're playing against the highest spenders in the game. So there's, you know, they have everything within reason, obviously, but compared to where we are, I think it's a big difference. So yeah, I just feel like we haven't wanted to climb to that same level. And so I think if there's one thing you can say about our Alliance, it's that we have a pretty good win rate. And the other thing is, I think the vast majority of the time, I think it's a lot of fun, and that's, you know, not accidental. So that's something that I think we value as part of a team strategy, even though it doesn't seem necessarily clear how that can be related to victory.
And I think that goes back to recruiting too, Spock, to circle back there. When we recruit, we ask a few key questions to try to gauge a person's mindset. And I think bringing more positive mindsets into the Alliance leads to a lot better feel for everybody.
Totally,
you know.
Totally agree. Yeah. These guys you know, people in the Alliance in general have helped out a lot with the recruiting stuff. And yeah, I've seen a lot of interest around, you know, why are you interested in joining? What did you not like about your last Alliance? We're really trying to like understand the the person a bit more, because I think we're at the end of the day, we're trying to find people and not just stats or rosters or anything like that. And just we never accept if you're out there, we never accept invites just or requests to join just from within the game. It's always handled through a recruiting process, so we can be more careful and intentional about the people that we add. One other point I wanted to make, and then we can see if there's any other points we want to circle back to, is that I think in considering this method, there is definitely a ceiling to it. I don't think this is the kind of thing where 7 Days Departed can go, all right, we're going to drop some strong players and we're going to bring in some weaker players to handle cleanups. I guess I'd be interested to see, but I feel very confident that would not work for them, because I think at that level, you really need every shred of advantage you can get. Level 30 troops, 20 emblems on all defenders, limit breaks and key spots, all that kind of stuff becomes really important. So I do think there is a ceiling to that, but it's been interesting to see that ceiling is for us is higher than we even want to go. So it's really not a limiting thing. We've pushed high. We've performed against a lot of tough teams, and we're still climbing. And every time I see us climb higher, I'm like, oh my God, how can we drop this down a little bit? Because I just don't want to see us pop into that upper tier. So we'll cross these bridges as we come to them. But yeah, to me, there's a lot of merits to this, and I'm curious to hear maybe in the comments if other people feel like sharing what you guys have done and what works for you. That would be pretty interesting to see. I don't have a ton of experience. I think this is only the second alliance that I've ever been in. I was briefly in one, very inactive. All I remember, it was called Whoop That Ass. I don't know how I found it. I was in there briefly and was just like, oh man, this is frustrating. And I was like trying to do more and to help with recruiting, and it just wasn't the right place. So I met, maybe Steve will be watching this, but I met Steve on the forum, and he was one of the co-leaders of the alliance. And so he brought me in, and now it's been a couple of years here now. So yeah, anything you guys want to circle back around to, just in thinking about this stuff, points you wanted to make that didn't come up in any other spot that you think are good to mention?
One of the things I was thinking about as we were talking about our cleanup crew is how often you see, and we even see it in our own alliance occasionally, where somebody will jump right back in and do what I call a rage clean.
Yeah.
And rage cleans never work out very well in my experience. Like, you're already pissed off because the first fight didn't go your way, so you jump right back in there with another team, and you're playing fast and you're not thinking about your moves, and it just doesn't work very well. Whereas a fresh set of eyes goes in there with a whole different outlook on, maybe it's a 40-point clean, and they're going to have to focus to make sure that they make the right moves to get those points off the board in 2 flags. And I think that I just, that whole rage clean thing, I think can be a real detriment to your team if you're already ticked off going into the fight.
It's a great point. I did it today. To be honest, like I had a terrible hit, and I was just like, screw this, I'll go right back into it. I got a 0 and a 1. I don't know what happened, but it just it was a rage clean, and never pays off. It really doesn't.
Because that frustration then goes from maybe a 50 out of 100 to 150 out of 100, where you're like, are you fucking kidding me? 2 balls in a row, Yeah, we try to encourage people to walk away if things aren't going well, just because, there's the untested part of who knows, maybe the RNG can change. I don't know. That's possible. Maybe it's not true. Who knows? But there's also just coming back with a fresh perspective of like, okay, that was annoying. Maybe I'll try a different team. Let me think about this. I think just, that space sort of being the opposite of the rage clean, where you're just able to approach more thoughtfully again, because even though this is a game of chance and a game of luck, there's a lot you can do to increase the odds in your favor, both in team composition, team selection, the way you play the board, the way you use your specials, I think the more you look, the more opportunities you can find. So I'm always one to encourage that style of play because I think it's easy to say, oh, the board sucked. And sometimes they just do. But there are times too where, like, because I'm posting all my hits, everyone notices everything. And I get to read the comments later of like, hey, bro, you shouldn't have done that because this. And I'm like, ah, shit, you're right. So
So
no
easy.
matter how much what's that?
So it's just so easy to miss something.
Yeah,
while
totally.
yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think it's easy to walk away from that and go, oh, that was a shitty board. And maybe it was, but usually there are opportunities for improvement. And I think that's an important mindset to be in, both just for how much fun you're having individually and also alliance contributions and that kind of stuff for wars.
And I also think, just that concept of attacking while on tilt is, not the best, it's not a great predictor of great outcome. And
Mhm.
secondly, like if you take a situation for Malix, where let's say he knocks the tank off the board and there's a 40-point clean there, and he takes it because he's mad. Well, now his flag, which could have gone for a one shot, because I know his roster is strong enough to do a one shot for anything on the board, is spent, and its maximum point earning can be 40 points. Whereas maybe my fourth team, which could club this tankless cleanup, it's only going to be good for 40. So we're not maximizing our flag usage, and therefore we're reducing our points per flag just by being mad.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
A final thought I had too that could be interesting in this context is that I think I often felt like, people don't want to do cleans. I don't think that's always true, because I think there can be something fun about it where maybe if you feel like your roster's not the strongest, then you're like, I feel like I'm letting people down, or I need to go to a weaker alliance where I can be stronger. But I think, having a ghosting lane or something right off the bat can allow you to use heroes that you wouldn't normally get to use and actually be quite successful with them. You can throw some tiles down the middle right in the beginning and, get some use out of that costume Aslar that you might not use quite as often. And so I think it can, similar to Rush Attack, because they're over so fast, usually letting you use some heroes at 370 and whatnot. I think the same thing can be true for cleans. So just finding people that are okay with that and on board with it, it might not be as hard as some people might think.
And by the way, H Money, I didn't kill the tank either time.
Oh, I know, and I didn't want it to sound like I was calling you out. I was just
No,
speaking
care.
about a hypothetical scenario, which does happen pretty darn often.
Yeah.
Where if you did knock the tank off and then you rage clean that 40-point clean, well, you're actually risking our points per flag because you're not maximizing your flag's potential, and you're taking away someone else's, that would have a lower flag's potential of their max, which in this case might be the 40.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that goes back to the point I was saying, where if I don't kill everyone, I can just go to the next one, and you're cleaning it up in 2 minutes. It's great. Like I said, it is our best weapon.
Mhm.
No question about it.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a good thought to end on. Thank you guys so much for weighing in. I think this is a fun format. So let us know in the comments if you want to see any more videos like this where we discuss different topics with people from the Alliance. If there's anything you're curious about with our Alliance that you want to hear us talk about, let us know, because I think this is a fun format. And, this game is about community, and I think YouTube is about community. So it's fun to be able to do stuff like this as well. So yeah, thank you guys again for being part of this. H Money for the idea. Make sure to check out his channel as well. And yeah, I guess we'll sign off here. So be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.